Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry to keep you waiting, but it's a great pleasure to see you here in such large numbers today, as always. I hope as you walked in, you all had your backs to the balcony behind, but you might have noticed some posters, and I hope you had a chance to see them. If not, you'll get a chance to see them afterwards, and I imagine that Dr. Reem is going to speak about them in the course of her lecture. It's a great pleasure to welcome Dr. Reem Elmutwalli, who has lived in the UAE since the age of 5, when her father, Tariq Elmutwalli, was appointed economic consultant to the then Crown Prince, UAE President, His Highness Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. She was fortunate, therefore, to enjoy close personal contact with the ruling family and their court from an early age. And this, together with countless interviews carried out over the years, is reflected in her ethnographic work on aspects of UAE culture and heritage. Dr. Elmutwalli holds a PhD from SOAS, which is the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, on the subject of Islamic art and archaeology. She played an important role in establishing a grassroots movement for UAE art during her 16 years as head of the Arts and Exhibitions Department at the Cultural Foundation of Abu Dhabi, which was formerly known as ADACH. And while there, she helped to launch and support the careers of many regional artists. In addition to writing an excellent book on the history and architecture of the Qasr al-Husn, which I think there might be copies of outside, I hope there are, Dr. Elmutwalli has also authored a book entitled Sultani, Traditions Renewed, Changes in UAE Women's Traditional Dress During the Reign of Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. The book documents significant aspects of the UAE's history in its most recent development. It describes the traditional clothing of UAE women as it has evolved during the past 5 decades, and sets these changes in their historical, cultural, social, economic, political, and ethnic contexts. She traces the impact of oil wealth, urbanization, access to the world market, and the pressures of globalization on clothing and a conservative Arab-Islamic society. It's a great pleasure to welcome Dr. Reem Elmutwalli to our podium. Thank you.
Thank you, NYU, for inviting me here today. And esteemed audience, thank you very much for being here. And I hope you will enjoy this. I love the subject, so I tend to carry on for hours. So stop me if you feel you're bored or anything of that sort. I welcome you all here today to introduce to you a subject so dear to my heart. I will use my book Sultani as the guide to take us through the story of women's dress in the UAE. However, trying to condense 3 to 2 volumes of 800 pages, as well as selecting what to show you from a collection of 140 articles of dress in 30 to 40 minutes is truly a difficult endeavor. So forgive me if I exclude certain parts or skim through others to help make your time more enjoyable. Sultani is a very special book. It is a first on many levels. It's a once-in-a-lifetime project that took 8 years to accomplish. That is not counting the research and study period. The first edition came in 3 volumes, bound in a specially sealed box that was sold out. Today, we have the second edition, condensed into 2 volumes, still 800 pages, where literally not one page is identical to the one that preceded it. We were a team that worked on this book. Though I am the author, it's a bilingual book and therefore required the help and diligence of many. It is the collaborative effort of a team of artists. We have the Iraqi artist Haif Kahraman, whose illustrations you see coming up as we go through. We have the UAE artist Fatma Luta, who captured many of the traditional dresses. We have a Syrian Raida Daboul, who was the chief Arabic language editor. We had to edit the book 5 times so I can get it done properly and for the English to be to correspond to the Arabic on the same page. It took a lot of work. And we have UAE Mohammed Mendi, the calligrapher, who did all the calligraphic work that you see in the book, and the Iranian Ali Rouhani, who did all the graphic illustration related to the book. This is one of the pieces by Haif Kahraman. Haif started with this book, and now she's an international artist. And I had to go back after 8 years to buy these 1 or 2 of these illustrations back from her for quite a sum of money. But I'm very happy for that. I dedicated this book to a person very dear to my heart, His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. I was privileged to know him on a personal level, and I'm certain he shared my passion in this field, as he was instrumental in enforcing the continuation of the custom of wearing the traditional dress among his family and his people. As I said, the book is a first on many levels. This is one of them. We got permission to publish an image of Sheikh Zayed's mother for the first time in a publication. To date, I mean, today, for the first time, a colored photograph of her. Her name was Sheikha Salama bint Buti bint Al-Hamid. And you see in the image here with them, Sheikh Sultan bin Zayed when he was a young boy. Sheikha Salama was featured in another publication in 1954, oddly enough. And it was by the Susan Heliard. She's pictured here in the old fort outside her room, personal quarters. So I wasn't the first to capture her, but the first one in color. The first volume of the book covers the historic, social, economic, political, religious aspects of the subject. Due to the lack of much references on the topic, the book relies heavily on interviews with different segments of society, leading us to another one of these firsts. It holds the first published information gathered from interviews with members of the ruling family, such as Sheikha Hosha bint Shakhbout, the mother of Sheikh Nahyan bin Mubarak, Sheikha Hamda bint Muhammad, Sheikha Salama bint Hamdan, wife of the Crown Prince, Sheikha Shamma bint Muhammad bin Khalid, Sheikha Moza bint Tahnoon, Sheikha Salama bint Tahnoon. I was privileged that they allowed me to tape them and to record their information, and for them to give me first-hand information and records about these clothings and about the custom of UAE dress, as well as interviews with UAE women of different segments and age and social strata. I always like to thank people like Dr. Moza Gbash, Asma Siddiq, Salam Al-Mreikhi, Moza Al-Hamili. They were very instrumental in giving me information and correcting a lot of it as I went along. It also records information from interviews with women who work in this field, known for their skilled experience. I refer here mainly to Fatma Saad. Fatma, unfortunately, passed away 4 months ago. So it touches me that at least I managed to record her for history. Fatma Saad grew up with the family of Sheikh Shakhbout, and she had a talent for tailoring. So she did most of the dresses that I own, not because I took them from her, but as I was given these pieces, I found out that she was the one who made them. And as a child, I used to watch her. And I went later on as an adult and sat with her many times to learn her methods of tailoring and how she did the work. Many men also helped me with this research. Affluent merchants such as Abdallah Khunji and Fardan al-Fardan, tailors such as Wazir and embroiderers and other technicians. Last but not least, it recorded information from expats who lived through the early years and happened to record their experiences, be it verbal or rare photographic forms. And among them, or the most important one of them also, is the late Gertrude Dyke, who was one of the first nurses who came to the Oasis Hospital in Al Ain and happened to photograph many of these ladies. This is a subject very unique because of the circumstances we live in, the extremes in all aspects that this area was and continues to be exposed to in such a short time span, where we jumped from something like this, not in 100 years or so, but in just one lifespan, to something like this. And everything we look at today, you will have to consider in such context and compare in terms of pre-oil and post-oil. So let us start by looking at the regional influences of dress in the UAE. Definitely, the topography, geography, population had a great impact on dress. The desert climate and non-sedentary lifestyle dictated dress to be light, layered, and multifunctional. Pearling meant trade with certain areas of the world, thus introducing certain influences, while Arab migrations and interactions brought with it particular influences in style. Indeed, these same factors continue to play a role on dress today and at this time. So where did the main influences on dress come from to the UAE? Let's look at the surrounding. The neshel, the thob neshel from Bahrain. This is the one red one and black and green on the right, your left, or on your right maybe, yeah. These are typical dresses from Bahrain, and you'll see the embroidery work and the decorative motifs that are on the bodice of the dress. On the other side, the black one, this is the thob Hashmi, which is called in Iraq. Terminology varies, but the style of dress is very, very similar, with unique changes from one region to the other. But the thob Najdi, which is the one that you see here with the fuchsia triangle, is considered to be the mother of all thobs. And ladies from the Murra tribe, as you see here, which are in Saudi Arabia area, Al-Ihsa area, they also tend to be dressed a similar way to the UAE women here today, in the past, and some of them even today. We also have influences such as the Qatari dress that you see, the color dresses here. Look at the Omani women. They have the same sort of burqa, they have the same sort of kandoras. They all dressed in a similar manner. We also have Iranian Arabstan tribes or Iranians of Arab descent who live on the opposite side of the Gulf. These photographs are of Iranian women, and I don't think you can differentiate them from UAE women. And that shows the closeness in interaction between both. Some of them are recent, and then you see the black and white ones, they are images from the 1920s. We had also East Africans, such as Zanzibar and Ethiopian slave trades brought in certain customs, such as henna and bright, vibrant colors. Blushi influence, as you see here in the corner, very similar to the decorative frontal style used in the UAE dress, while the Indian influences of the whole Indian subcontinent hold the most footprint on dress in the UAE, be it color, fabrics, embroidery. But most particular is what you see here with the distinctive left-hand side collar slit or opening present on many UAE kandoras. So politics have influences on dress. One might wonder, yes, clothing often played a distinctive role in politics. The Ottomans were very meticulous about dress. They recorded everything and had rules and dress codes for every occasion. They ruled the Islamic Empire, and dress codes filtered into areas such as Iraq, Syria, and the Levant. These dress codes continued to play a role in politics and reforms, even in the modern Turkish society. The Iranians also had dress codes that went through many changes depending on the social and economic circumstances. What concerns and influenced the UAE and surrounding Gulf region was the fact that in 1939, dress reforms dictated by the Shah as a way of introducing Iran into the Western era was that they banned the chador. This was known locally as kashf al-hijab. It resulted in the migrations of Arab tribes from one side of the Gulf to the exact opposite. And thus you see the interaction between that and the area. Saudi Arabia continues to have strict dress codes, both for religious and social aspects. However, in the UAE, though we do not have the stringent dress rules you find in Saudi Arabia, social necessities played a distinct role in certain dress articles becoming a symbol of identity and status. The notion of concealment. Religious historic versus social or political factors is a topic of its own. So I will not address it here, but I would like to just point out an interesting aspect. That is the increase in concealment that became more apparent in UAE society as it changed from a pre-oil to a post-oil era. As I will show you now, these are women photographed in 1958 and 62. They are going about in public with their daily chores. With modernization and statehood came new conditions and variables that dictated different customs. As you see here, they are not dressed in a black abaya. They are wearing colorful dresses. They have a very long shayla that covers their body, the black one. And one lady in the corner, she's wearing a black thobe with a shayla rather than an abaya. So how did they make their dresses? They used simple measurement units based on proportions of the human body. It's very functional and very clever, yet very simple. You have a ba', you have a war, which is this one up to here. You have a dhra', then you have a shibr, which is this. And then you have a fitr, which is this. And then you have a chef, which is the hand, and the isba'. So it all works with the form of the body and very simplified. They take measurements in that format. They took measurements simply by hand, following the contours of the body. They used an old garment as a pattern for the new one. And of course, what helped tremendously was the fact that clothes had one or two basic patterns. I remember Fatma Saad, the lady that I was speaking of earlier. As a child, she used to sit on the floor, take an old piece of kandora, put it and shibr it, take the measurements, and then she knows, for example, Sheikh Nahyan's mother is 1 shibr more taller than Sheikh Nahyan's sister, while his aunt is maybe 4 fingers less wide than her niece, and so on. And she recorded that in her mind and used it to do their dresses. So that's how people measured everything. Women tailored their own garments and those of their families. Everything was recycled. They did not have much in earlier times, so new clothes were worn first at special occasions, such as the Eid or weddings. Then, as it got worn out, it was used for daily chores and eventually cut up or used for a younger member of the family, then given away to another person who is more needy, and so on and so forth. While highly valued and rare fabrics were reserved for special prominent areas of the garment, as we shall see later. Remember the Najdi dress and the fuchsia triangle that was on it? Silk was very rare. So therefore, when they had a piece of silk, they placed it in a very special place where it could be visible and seen, but not used in a large quantity. So you have that area of the gazette where they used the colorful, more expensive fabrics. Everything was based on paneling, and paneling was based on the size of the loom and soon on the width of the fabrics that were imported. This paneling that stemmed from a pure functional aspect eventually became the traditional style that was carried through to this date. So we start with the dresses beginning with panels because it was based on the loom. Eventually, with time and as modernization came in or modernity came in, people who came from outside and started making those dresses followed the designs that they saw was prevalent at that time, and they started repaneling them and cutting the fabrics according to that. So you have a loop where people are always taking something from those who are before them and then repeating itself in a different matter. We shall see a lot of this reversal of roles went on in terms of dress in the area. What are the most common fabrics? Fabrics have their own charm when it comes to Arab women's psyche in general. After all, cotton comes from Qutn, muslin comes from medieval Mosul, damask comes from Damascus, mohair comes from mukhayyar, meaning to choose, tafta comes from the Persian tafta, seersucker comes from siri shakar, meaning cream and sugar in Persian. Not only that, but other dress-related terms also came from the region. Sash came from shash, chemise came from qamis, kamarband came from kumar band, kaftan came from kaftan, and gala came from khil'a. In the UAE, women are expert by nature or intuition when it comes to the fabrics. They can tell just by looking and from a distance exactly what another one is wearing. Mainly cotton, wool, and the rare silk were the traditionally used fabrics. Their names were derived generally from the designs or shapes printed or embroidered on the fabric, such as butayara or burubiya, place or origins, such as atlas, transformed from a foreign name into a local dialect, like they say mdarras, meaning it comes from the word dress. Technique of manufacture, such as the Indian term zari. Logo or name of a manufacturing company. What's funny was the fact that I kept on coming across this fabric that was called butifaha. And I always wondered what it was, and I kept looking and looking, and nobody would give me an answer to it. And one day, I was with Abdallah Khunji, and we were going through old fabrics that he started collecting when he knew I am studying the subject and bringing them to me. So as we were looking through some cottons, he ripped open one out of a box, and by chance, I looked at the label, and it had an apple on it. The company had an apple on it. So we understood that the name came from Butifaha, meaning from the company that has an apple on it. And that's how they got the name. So sometimes color or luster gives the name to the fabric. So for the sake of time, I will highlight just three. Butila, also called butayara or burubiya. Burubiya meaning rupiya from the Indian coin, and that is the spotted or specked form of fabric. It's the same one that is called butayara because it could have a small design on it, or bunafa, it means it has a small speck on it. So you can use any one of those terms for that, and it's the red one. Then you have Sultani. Sultani is also the name of the book, and that's why I used it, because it had a play on Zayed bin Sultan, Sultan being royal, the Sultan, and Sultani being the fabric. It is the silk, it's a Chinese silk that is striped, and it's usually very lustrous. And it is, in general, it is this purple and red color, but it could come in different other colors. And it's called Sultani. And it's mainly used for the sarwal and the kandura, the inner garments. And tur mnaqqad. Mnaqqad meaning it has nuqud on it, or meaning it has some sort of a silver coinage on it. And that's what you see in the bottom. It's usually lace that is interlaced with small, very thin strands of silver. Now it is important to point out that during the early 70s, on the first trip that Sheikh Zayed took to Switzerland, he was accompanied by a delegation, among them Abdallah Khunji, the renowned fabric merchant, who informed me that this was the first time he got to import European fabrics to the area upon His Highness's encouragement. From then on, these finer fabrics began to replace those earlier ones from the East. But to date, the motifs and elements of the past are still looked for in their Western counterparts. Abdallah started as a general store and eventually specialized when Sheikh Zayed asked him to bring the silk into the land as a fabric merchant. How did they decorate their clothes? Two main decorative methods are traditional. The first is mkhawwar or mzarray, which means machine embroidery, where khwar denotes the embroidery in general. The tarchiba is a very interesting aspect. It is the neckline embroidery that you see in the image here. This used to come from India ready-made, therefore it is called tarchiba, because you trakkubiha, you install it on another piece of garment. So because it was silver and it was valuable, the women would get it and put it on their dress. It wears out, they take it off and re-put it on another neckline. And they reused it on a different thobe. Note the simplicity of this article, as you will see its size and shape grow in time. The telli, the most traditional of decorative methods used in the UAE, is a form of threading similar to the lace making, but in simpler form, using a cone-like metal support and an oval, almost American football shape-like cushion. Threads are braided together, creating a long, stiff metallic weave ribbon that is then applied on the edges of a certain clothing, such as the thobe, kandura, or the sarwal. This is an early example of the telli work, and you see how simple it is. The stiffness of the braids dictate the shape or decorative motifs that are applied, in which it is applied. Speaking of the sarwal, let me jump and give you a brief on this undergarment typically used by women in the UAE. As you can see, it is a form of a baggy pants, generally of cotton. Buchefse, meaning simply turned into on its hem, in its simplest daily cotton form. Colorful fabric and silk, though rarely used, are reserved to the visible part of the ankles, while the top part, which is not visible, is usually of cotton. White cotton and lace eventually took over the edging for everyday use, to be replaced by modern leggings of different materials and designs today, leaving the silver badla you see on my left to the posterity and those special occasions. Made in the telly method to continuously be moved from an old sarwal to a newer version as it is worn out. Again, this is a woven silver thread part of the ankle, and it is interchanged as the sarwal itself gets worn out. They don't make this anymore. The ones I have date to 15 years ago. That was the last time that we managed to find one made in that format. Today you see those embroidered kind, as is in this image, and imitation that look like the telly work of before. This important part of the traditional sarwal or badla is a silver woven edge, where most of the wealth accumulates. In times of stress, the garment used to be discarded and the silver melted down. The sarwal underwent many changes and development, from the simple to the bizarre. Some of them were teamed with ensembles, others were so heavily embroidered they stood up on their own. I remember wearing one of those when I was younger, and you couldn't move, it was so stiff, and the embroidery extended up to the knee high. What did they wear on their feet, you might ask? In general, nothing. Hence the extensive henna use. Even in today's world, where all forms of designer shoes are worn in public, many still favor walking barefoot indoors. Two main footwear was known in early times. Dlagat, from the Turkish dlag, meaning socks. Nu'ul were the generic sandals, teamed always with the ftah or rings, such as these, toe rings. What constitutes the body of UAE women's dress then? Most people, when I speak of traditional UAE dress, they assume it is the abaya, the black cloak. But the traditional women's dress is composed of a number of garments that are worn under the abaya. To begin with is the face mask. The term burqa, meaning that which conceals, is used primarily in the UAE. At times, there's another term that is used in the region called battula. It signified the woman's right of passage from girlhood to womanhood, as only those who are married wear the burqa. With the introduction of education resulting in the delay of marriage age and newer modern life requirements, the custom of wearing the burqa has receded. They come in all shapes and sizes, according to the preference of the woman, her age, her tribe, and her style. Each lady cuts it to fit her individual style, to highlight her most beautiful feature, or the opposite, to cover her worst feature. What is imperative is to keep the eyebrows and mouth concealed. And this is a mistake that many people who are not from the region, who tend to model the burqa, do. If you see in pictures in many of the magazines nowadays, they have a woman wearing a burqa and her eyebrows are showing. And it's one of my pet peeves. It disturbs me a great deal because the object was to cover the eyebrow and not to show the lips. And that's how you could tell if it's a real local or not, because if they are wearing it in a different format, this is not from the UAE. A common mistake made, as I said, by non-UAE women when modeling this traditional dress. The burqa riyasi, what you see here, is adorned with gold coins, another beauty and saving mechanism in one. This is generally owned by the wealthy and reserved for weddings and special occasions. with hospital visits in early times, as you can see here, being one of such occasions that called for getting all decked out. Women would go, it took them a long time to go from one area to the other, so it was a full outing, and they went out all decked with their jewelry that they wore and their wealth on their body. And you see them here dressed. These were images by the late Gertrude Dyke in Al Ain. Modernization did affect the burqa, same as all other garments. As you see, a diamond-studded example by Damas Jewelers from the year 2000, and a more recent laser-cut example. Look at how she's wearing it. This is how it is not correct. Her eyebrows are showing, her mouth is showing. It does not conform to what tradition dictates. What about the head cover, you ask? Let me show you a traditional hairdo first, the ijfa. The ijfa this image is a very rare image. This is a drawing that was made of the image by Fatima Luta, or a painting. And then here you see this rare image of a woman in 1962. It shows her in full traditional attire, inclusive of her hairdo. You see the tarchiba on her thobe. You see the neckline, with the left opening underneath on her kandora. You see her burqa, and you see this hairstyle. Please keep in mind to compare when we come to today's versions of the same outfit. Khimar, hijab, or bushiya, or bukhnog are but a few terms used interchangeably among Gulf states to denote two articles of head cover that vary only slightly, if at all, from one another. In the UAE, two distinct terms are used. The wugaya, from the term to protect, wiqaya. This is the black tulle, black voile sort of thing that covers her face on top of her burqa, is a publicly used black fabric to conceal the face. Or it is used in a colored version like these for prayers or to be when you are at home. Mainly cotton, and it wraps around the entire body. The second headdress is the shayla, which you see here. In earlier days, as these images show, women wore a wide, engulfing shayla outdoors. Not many could afford the abaya. Then you have the mnaqad, which is a special shayla. It is decorated with silver, and it is usually worn by the wife of a sheikh or maybe a bride, borrowed by a bride for her wedding night. And now, look at what modernization did to the shayla. This is something that now we call bunafkha. Bunafkha. You have insignia, signet labels that are used on fabrics that are placed on the head now with a special hairdo that is fixes the hair high up and creates this effect. The outer body cover, or the aba, the epitome of concealment. We seldom associate as a status symbol, but if you go to Harrods today wearing one of these and see how they treat you like royalty. To remind you, these are more images dating to 1958. They show women in public finishing chores, women in colorful dresses with or without the aba. If colored in black, it is thought the use of an outer thobe, again, not an aba. So from earlier times to date, the aba was and very much is a status symbol associated with the upper echelons of society, and when used, it was the head aba or abatras. They came in plain or decorated at the edges, what they call the buhela, but always worn on the head, and when owned, used for all occasions, with the aba suwaiya, or khdud, as they called it, being the most valued of abas, as it was decorated with gold bands, similar to the one we see on men these days, to date. The 1980s introduced the shoulder aba, and it came from Saudi Arabia. With modernization, the head aba was no longer possible to wear. It was not functional. They still wear it nowadays, but on certain occasions, if you're going to a wedding and you want to conceal what you're wearing underneath, and older women tend to wear the head aba a lot. But girls who are now in working, they are driving. It's very difficult to work and function with a head abaya. So the shoulder abaya, which acquired sleeves, became common and began to be used to date. To bring us to date, as it became more stylized and comes in endless array of styles and models, and more recently, we have colored abayas. A lot of the girls, I'm sure you will see at the university now, wear different colored cloaks or abayas to cover their inner garments. So, what are the main components of dress? We have though generally worn together in earlier times, they were never needed to be matched or coordinated. On the contrary, the more contrast the texture and color and print, the merrier. The thobe or outer garment, as you can see here, the thobe is always very sheer, of light fabrics that generally are transparent, allowing the dress underneath to be visible, the kandora. I'm sorry, I can't tell which is left and right, but that's the kandora, which has the slit on the left, and that is the inner garment. And this is the thobe, the lighter one, which has the central axis of decorative method, and it is worn on top. It's usually sheer. They both can be worn publicly and at home, and they are usually, the thobe is usually the more formal one, and the kandora is more the daily one. Women also tend to wear something called the nafnoof, which is the waisted dress, or it is called sometimes fustan, or it is called sometimes gawan, we think from gown, the Western waisted dress. This example is from Sheikha Aisha bint Shakhbout, wife of Sheikh Nahyan, and it is all embellished with real gold coins. And it dates back to 2001. Now I will show you examples of the thobe and kandora as they evolved through time. This is one of the earliest dresses that I have, and it dates to 1968. It was gifted to my mother by Sheikh Tahnoon's wife, and it is of silver. It has the silver tarchiba. It has the mnaqqad thobe on top, the light one, which is decorated with silver specks, and it has the silver neckline, which is with the opening to the left. It comes with the head shela, which is also mnaqqad, and the silver badla. This is a thobe that dates to 2001. It is Budayil, and it used to be owned by Sheikha Aisha bint Shakhbout, mother of Sheikh Nahyan. And what it means is it has a train. Veil is a train, and it has a train in the back of it. Here we have thobe riyasi, which is decorated by gold coins. This one dates again to the 80s, and you can see the neckline. It has gold coinage on it. This is another one. It belonged to Salama bint Hamdan, wife of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, and again, it is the type that is called miyazza, which is cut into strips, horizontal strips, and therefore we call it miyazza. Before, these strips matched the size of looms, and that's why they had different colored ones. Now they imitate that idea by using ready-made fabrics in different colors and placing them in this format. This is another one called mfahah because the stripes are lengthwise. This is a dress that comes from the 70s, and it is embroidered mkhawwar. Remember I spoke about that. It is the machine embroidery in gold and silver and using the butayra fabric. Another one in green, but this one has crystals. When crystals were beginning to be introduced in 1980s and mainly came from Japan. Then you have the thobutelli. Remember the old one I told you to pay attention, the simple one? This is one of the 80s. We have metallic thread that comes in different colors that came also from Japan, and it began to be used. Look at the neckline, it's almost dropping off the shoulder, it is that big. Now, what's interesting is that necklines began to grow with time and with wealth because women started acquiring European necklaces that were of diamonds, and precious stones, and they wanted to show them off. So the neckline became bigger and bigger to allow the necklaces to be more visible and better displayed. So that's another change that took place with those. Eventually, late 80s, beginning 90s, the thob and kandura became one, as you see here. The neckline is just one. Underneath, the kandura became the sort of lining of the thob, and they were made of the same fabric, one in silk, which is opaque, and one underneath, and the lighter, more chiffon-like, lightweight, translucent fabric was worn on top. The embroidery itself, we call it same, meaning it is the same image that you see on the fabric, printed on the fabric, re-embroidered onto the neckline. This is another one from the 80s, and it shows you the introduction of crystal beads for embroidery. Again, the motifs reflect the same motif that is used on the fabric, and the fabric comes in two formats: the silk opaque one, which is used for the kandura, and the lighter sheer fabric, which is used for the thob. When we started wearing these at the time, they became so heavy because the crystal is too heavy when it is embroidered on the chiffon, so it falls off. So we adapted by using tic-tacs, they call them, to hold the dress, the neckline here. So we started with large safety pins, and eventually somebody invented those tic-tacs to hold the neckline so we can wear them with all this heavy embroidery. Then you get, again, regional influences. We're back to that cycle, but this time it is coming from Morocco. Moroccan style began to influence a lot of the dresses because people were beginning to go to Morocco, especially the ruling family. And they brought in these dresses with them, and they adapted them into the national or the traditional dress. International artists and designers began to work with this and began to develop it. The increased wealth meant that you had audience and people who wanted to buy more and more dresses. So the market, the whole global market, became interested in supplying it. This is a dress made, decorated by the famous Lebanese artist Wajih Nahla. He was on a visit to the UAE, and we asked him to do dresses with his own paintings on them, and this was one of them. This is another dress that was done by a sculptor who just passed away 2 years ago, Muhammad Ghani, one of the famous sculptors from Iraq. This is the introduction of calligraphic forms onto the dress. The leaders in this field are Dar al-Azya al-Iraqiyya. This is a governmental institution that used to exist. It was the only one of its kind, and it took place in Iraq. Unfortunately, it's completely destroyed now. It's no longer there. But they were the first governmental entity that preserved and studied Iraqi costumes historically, and this is one of their pieces, adaptation into a Hashmi or thob. To sum it all up, we came a long way, and the dress developed very quickly and evolved, the UAE national dress, within these 30 years period. Within one lifespan, we managed to get from something as simple to something as elaborate as this. And now I'm going to show you some designs that I worked on. I began to experiment by creating designs myself because I wanted to study how these dresses were made, and eventually took them into production. And most of the ruling family began to dress in them because they wanted to receive their guests with something that was inspired by their culture. So now you see modern interpretations of these dresses that I just spoke about, including the abaya. And some of the ladies began to wear them with modern outfits underneath, without the kandora, as it was traditional before, and began to use them with pants or began to use them for specific occasions. This was a dress we embroidered with a poem of Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. A whole poem is in the train, and it's about 10 meters long. And to sum it up, this is where we were, and in 30 years, we ended where we are today. Any questions?
Where do you see the dress
The UAE dress.
going from here?
I think we are very privileged because we are at a stage where the UAE woman continues to wear her dress. It has not gone to folkloric or museum format. They continue to adapt it and they continue to evolve with it and redesign it and redevelop it and reuse it, which is a beautiful and positive effect. But this is life and we are humans and we do not dress as the way our ancestors dressed before. It's an evolving issue, it will continue to evolve, and elements of it will continue to stay with us, and others will become part of history. For example, the burqa. The burqa was a paramount object of clothing at a certain time. Today, mostly the older generation wear the burqa. The younger women, many of them, I can't generalize, but some of them or many of them have stopped wearing the burqa altogether. So these things happen anywhere in the world. Yes.
Thank you for preserving this really beautiful history.
Thank you.
Are there any plans to put some of the dresses, especially some of the ones with the gold, they're
Yes.
so pretty.
Yes.
Will they be in any of the museums, for example, right here on Sariyat?
Yes, I have been approached and I'm still a bit greedy. I want them for me. But we are working on it. Dubai, the museums here, they have been asking me because I have them chronologically available, which is something very rare to have, especially with textiles. Textiles deteriorate very quickly. And with our way of life, we are people who give away. We don't keep, and we reuse them all the time, as I said. So most of these dresses were recycled in one form or the other, and it's very difficult to be able to find them. And I was very lucky that I kept them. My work at the Cultural Foundation, I believed that I should dress up in the national costume throughout the programs, and that got me indirectly collecting them because I wanted to wear them, and that's why I know exactly when they were made, because I wore them for this occasion or that occasion, so we could date them. And that worked as a plus for me. But yes, of course, D3, Dubai Design District, is thinking of having a semi-permanent display of them. I would like to have them moving around. I would like them to be available at different institutions at different times of the year. So more of the younger generation, more of the expatriates, more of the people who live in the country tend to see them. They were on display 2 weeks ago in Dubai, and we had over 5,000, 10,000 people coming in to look at them, and they were very excited about them. So that's very good.
We see these beautiful dresses at weddings when we go to Emirati weddings, but on everyday basis, we just see women covered in black.
Yes.
When did that happen? When did they start completely covering in black, and why black?
Okay. You see them covered in black because you're seeing them in public. So it's not because they are covering in black, it's because they are in public. It's like wearing a coat when you are in a cold country. The custom here is to wear something on top of your clothing to conceal the inner part. But underneath, they are wearing these colorful dresses. So the black abaya, in my opinion, is an outer cover that is used publicly. Underneath, you could wear whatever you want. Some of them wear modern clothing. Some of them wear both of them, a combination of both, depending on the time and the occasion. And as you said, at weddings or social gatherings at home, if you walk into any of the UAE homes today, at any time, you will find women wearing their kandoras. The older women, they would even have their thobe on top of that. So they continue to wear them. They are still there, but it's because you are in a public arena, you are not seeing it. Now, as far as the black color is concerned, the black color, there are many different dialogues and thoughts and analogies regarding that, and you can go back and read so much about it. A lot of people say it came from Persia, others said that it's a black color, it's opaque, therefore it covers what is underneath it, and since the woman is trying to cover herself, black color works better. Others even take it back to poetry, and there's a very famous poem that was said as a publicity gimmick somewhere, I think, I'm not sure of the date, but according to my information, there was this merchant who had many veils that were colorful, and the woman bought all the colorful veils, and he had only the black ones left over, and he needed to sell them because he was going to go into ruins. And he went to his best friend, who was a very famous poet, and he asked him to help him. So he wrote the verses قل للمليحة ذو الخمار الأسود ماذا فعلت بناسك متعبدي قد كان قد شمر يديه ساعديه للصلاة حتى وقفت له بباب المسجد, which translate into tell this beautiful maiden, what did you do to this pious monk when you came there and stood by him while he wanted to pray with your black veil and captured his mind. So all the women ran out and bought the black veil and started wearing it because it gave them this thought of that will make them special. So there are many stories about it, and we cannot really pinpoint exactly why. But logically, it is something that covers the body. It helps not show what is underneath it, and therefore it is used in black, most probably.
Hi, I found your talk very interesting. We had a talk a few days ago on de-stereotyping the abaya and how that can be used as a way to express individualism, and it's not oppressive as some people might think.
Yes.
How has that developed in terms of expressing individualism through clothes from the past generations and then till now?
I think this is a very good question, and I think we see it on a daily basis. If we speak about the abaya itself, today, if you walk around campus, I'm sure you will see so many young ladies wearing different forms of the abaya, each one of them trying to say, this is what I think, or this is who I am. This is human nature, and in any society this would happen. A lot of experimentation took place in the UAE due to specific factors. One, we live at a time where globalization is there, technology is there, we are open to the whole world, everything can come to us and we can go to everywhere. This helped tremendously. What used to take place in 50 to 100 years is taking place within a few years. And wealth has is another factor. Having tremendous wealth as we have here and a small community, it meant that we could have, instead of one example, we can have 10. And it is reflected in our daily use. You see it. So they can afford to have more, therefore they can experiment more, and they can go through the process of evolution much faster than any other generation that before them.